I'm Yvonne Hamoud, registered social worker and owner of New Moon Counseling. But out of the office, I'm a mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. Join me each week as I sit with a special guest to discuss everyday things that impact our mental health. We'll be chatting about everything from mental health and relationships to media and current events, as well as personal experiences and reflections, all in the hopes of normalizing our humanness and helping you see that you're not alone. This is Outside the Therapy Room. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to season 2 of Outside the Therapy Room. I can't believe we are on our second season, and I'm so excited for everyone to kind of hear all of the guests that we have lined up for this season. I hope you had a wonderful summer. Our summer went by so quickly, but we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of kind of day trips, and just kind of being off routine sometimes is really, really nice. I also got a lot of reading done, and my family, as you know, we're golfers, so we had a lot of fun times out on the golf course, and it's just kind of sad for summer to be coming to an end. And that is our topic for today. I thought it would be a nice way to kind of start, as it is the end of summer and my kiddos are getting ready for back to school. And sometimes with back to school, there can be a lot of emotions, I think, for kids, teens, parents, even some teachers. And yeah, our conversation will be, hopefully providing some tools to help make this transition a little easier for you. I remember sometimes feeling very nervous in my back to school when I was a kid. And other times I remember feeling a mix of excitement to kind of see my friends that I maybe didn't get a chance to see during the summer. And I'm also a sucker for routine. So I needed and maybe missed the structure and routine of school. But I know for my kiddos, you all know I have 2 kids, 9 and 6, and they both have kind of different views of back to school. My oldest is a little nervous because this year at their school, there's going to be a few changes that weren't there last year. So he's a little bit more nervous, whereas my youngest is really excited to kind of see his friends again. And so there is a mix of those emotions happening at our house now too. I also find that for me as a parent, getting things organized like back to school shopping, having to prepare lunches again, which isn't always fun. Having to do all that is also a little bit of preparation that I need to do on my end that can kind of add to that level of stress. And sometimes I feel a little nervous about it, having to, wake up and drop off and get lunches prepared. All of those things can be overwhelming. And I have some teacher friends who are also going back into the classrooms this week and getting everything set up for their classrooms, who are also experiencing some worry and maybe just a mix of emotion of, how to set up their classrooms, any kind of things that they need, going back into a routine, new students, all of that. So there's just a lot going on for a lot of people. And I want to kind of support and help you guys prepare for back to school as best as I can. And so I think it's kind of broken up into 3 different things. So kind of the practical preparation, like the things that you need, the emotional preparation, talking about those emotions that can come up, and also mindset preparation. And so for practical preparation, that's going to look like school supplies, clothes, organizing a space. We have kind of a landing unit where when the boys get home from school, that's where their bags go. That's where they need to empty out their lunches, bring them to the sink. Everything kind of happens in that little area. And so organizing a space to have a landing area, if you don't already have one at your place, that can sometimes be helpful. For me, it's helpful because at least it contains the chaos in one spot. And that's where any notes, anything that's coming home from school also kind of goes in that area. And then we can pick it up and take a look at it. School supplies, again, I've purchased school supplies beforehand, depending on the school and the teacher. Sometimes it either ends up changing or we need to go back to the school that first week. So however your family kind of sets up school supplies, kind of following up that way. And then clothes. We just bought our kiddos new indoor and outdoor shoes. Man, those shoes stink. Like they're so smelly, especially like at the end of the year. They've probably gone through a couple pairs of shoes at that point, but they're just so smelly. So they have brand new shoes that smell normal. And hopefully it stays that way for a little while. So kind of that kind of practical preparation. I remember being so excited about back to school shopping. I love the notepads, the pens, the notebooks, like all of the things that we get. I love that. And so even now I'll see something and I'm like, oh, I need more pens. When in reality, I don't. But that's just something I really enjoy. And I remember as a kid really loving going back to school shopping. My parents would take us back to school shopping and then we would come home and try on our first day of school outfits. And me and my brothers would kind of do like a little fashion show for my parents with our back to school outfit that we picked out for the very first day. And so I remember feeling super excited and super cool, kind of showing off my new outfit. And so that may be a tradition that you have in your family to kind of go back to school shopping, and kids grow up so fast. Like even my kiddos kind of went through a growth spurt this summer. And so clothes is definitely necessary. And also if you're an older student going into university, sometimes it's, you're buying merch from the school that you're going to, or trying to figure out what kind of outfit you want to wear that first day. It's kind of like a first impression thing that we want to look or present ourselves a certain way on that first day. And sometimes our clothing can help us feel more confident, which can sometimes help our more nervous emotions as they come up. So that's kind of, again, like backpacks, lunches, things like that, getting all of those practical preparations for back to school. And then we go into the emotional preparation. And so for my kiddos, because there's going to be a change at their school, it's talking about what to expect. Thankfully, the school has been open with us, and so we were able to kind of prepare since the end of the year to kind of see what it's going to look like. Is it going to look different? We've gone to the school before to kind of see some of these changes, and we're going to be going again in the next couple of days, kind of walk the yard, play in the playground, do those things so they can kind of get accustomed to those changes beforehand. And so if your kiddo's going to a new school, sometimes driving to the new school, playing at the new school, doing some things like that with the outdoor areas of the school, that can kind of be a way to prepare your kids. If there's a specific path that the kids have to take, or if the kids have to walk to school now that they're old enough to do so, maybe practicing and doing that walk can just help them feel a little bit more confident about where they're going and what they need to do, what they're going to be seeing, all of those things. And it can sometimes help with those nerves and the anxiety leading up to it. Our anxiety can sometimes really like planning. And so if we've kind of created that plan of, hey, every morning we're going to, a week before school, we're going to walk the walking route that you're going to take for school, they can have that preparedness. And it does help to kind of alleviate that anxiety that we feel. And then also like talking to kids about what to expect. Do you know if they're going to be the same teacher? Do you know if their kids are going to be the same? If your kiddo's going to a new school, then there's some practical things that they're going to be expecting that is going to happen for any student. You're going to walk new hallways. You're going to meet teacher. You're going to make some new friends. You're going to, have your lunch breaks, and you're going to have outdoor time. And so being able to kind of just talk to the kids about what that is going to look like, what that process is going to look like, can be really helpful. And especially for JKs, for little kiddos who are going back to school, kind of having that conversation. Most of the times with JKs, at least from my experience as a parent, they've been really great at either creating a video and sending it to families closer to the end of the summer to kind of show kiddos and get them prepared for what to expect. What are their cubbies going to look like? What's their classroom going to look like? What kind of toys do they have? And with some of that, then you're able to kind of, show them what to expect in terms of an exciting play area that they can see, or whatever it could be. And so sometimes that emotional preparation is also talking to kids about how they are feeling about school. What are their feelings about it? What are their worries? What are things that they're excited about? Sharing your own stories with your kids can also be really helpful, reminding them that you were a child once who was also afraid about, going to school and meeting new people or starting at a new school. So kind of having a moment to have those conversations with your kiddo can definitely be helpful. And then mindset preparation. Mindset preparation is I guess goes hand in hand with the emotional preparation piece. It's kind of, reframing what the new school year could be. It can be kind of like a fresh start. It can be, if you're at a brand new school, can kind of be a fresh new start for you. We see it so much in movies, kind of like reinvent yourself at any new school that you go to. But it is kind of a fresh new start where you can make new friends, and you just kind of have a fresh start for yourself in terms of, your academics, hobbies, any kind of activities you want to try out at school. And so having that reframe about the school jitters can kind of be helpful, as a reframe often is when it comes to what our thoughts are bringing up for us. And I think the other important thing is highlighting that you can feel more than one way about going back to school. You can feel really excited about seeing your friends and getting to play on a new playground or with a group of friends that you maybe normally don't see outside of school. And you can feel that excitement alongside nerves and anxiety about the grade that you're going into, coursework being harder, or who you're going to have as a teacher, or anything else that may come up. And so really being able to highlight the mix of emotions that can come with going back to school. Some tips that I like, I love my checklists. So creating a checklist in terms of supplies, emotional check-ins, any kind of coping strategies that you discussed with your kiddo can also be on that emotional check-in. So how am I feeling emotionally? I'm feeling excited and nervous. Okay. For the nervousness, I can practice some deep breathing. Or I'm too excited, I'm jumping all over the place, I need to calm my body down. I'm going to do some deep breathing. I'm going to do butterfly breath. And that can kind of be their little emotional check-in. Or even included in that could be like a mantra that you taught your kid to say to themselves, like, I'm walking to school and I'm scared, but I'm going to be brave. I've walked this path before. I know I'm not going to be alone. There's going to be other kids around. Like, kind of having those emotional check-ins and reminders can be helpful. You can also encourage and involve your kids in their school prep to kind of boost their sense of control. And so what my parents did would be like back to school clothing, pick the outfit that you want to wear on your first day. We do that at our house as well. And also with some flexibility, they get to choose what they want to take to lunch and the snacks that they want to have that very first day. Again, I say with flexibility because sometimes it ends up being leftovers from the day before. But they do. And obviously, like, some schools have, a bunch of different restrictions, like peanuts that they can't have. And so within reason, they get to kind of choose the snacks and what they're going to take for lunch. And then kind of, something that we use a lot at our house is humor. And sometimes with that humor, it can be so helpful just to break the ice, but also to help normalize the situation. And so sharing a couple of funny, maybe relatable mishaps that have happened to you as an adult, and sharing that with your kids to kind of normalize the chaos of what back to school would look like. My kids can't believe that when I was in elementary school, the class list would happen the day of. We would show up and the teachers would be there and they'd shout names and we'd have to line up. And my kids can't believe that. They're like, that sounds so crazy, but it's funny to them. So yeah, kind of being able to share some of those funny things. So with anxiety, like we've talked a couple times, there are some common signs about back to school anxiety that I want you to be aware of. So kids either avoiding sleep, waking up much earlier than their usual time and numerous times in a row, that can be a sign of, like, not only anxiety, but also time anxiety. They get anxiety about being late or not wanting to miss the bus. Your body's going to kind of be on high alert and it might wake you up a few times in the morning. That can be a sign to look at. Tummy aches. If your child is eating normally and they're relatively healthy and they're complaining about a lot of stomach aches, that can also be a sign of anxiety. And so when your kiddo communicates these things, when you notice that they're not sleeping, when they're waking up numerous times close to the morning, so like at 4, 5, and 6, and they're complaining of tummy aches, maybe they're a little bit more irritable, that's a sign for you to approach and to communicate, hey, what's going on? You were getting too close to the first day of school. Are you feeling a certain way, because it might look, or it looks like to me that you might be feeling anxious about this. Is this right? And you can kind of start having that conversation with your kiddo about the kind of signs that you're seeing around anxiety. I think, as we all know, a root cause of anxiety can sometimes be new teachers, especially if a teacher is known to be either hard or more strict. Sometimes there's anxieties around that. Social worries, like friend group, especially for new kiddos, like, starting a new school. Depending on how far into the year, a lot of groups of friends have already been created. And so social worries about where they're going to fit in that. Academic pressure. If there's pressure either coming internally or externally from family members, parents, that can be a lot, especially looking at certain grades. If a kiddo's going into grade 11 or 12, they're thinking about their next steps, and that can be a lot of that pressure that can increase the anxiety that they're feeling. And also separation anxiety, that is not only for little kids in kindergarten. Separation anxiety can also exist with older kids in high school, or even, students going into university. It's being able to kind of notice what the anxiety is around that separation. Obviously, it's more common with kiddos in JK. If they've been used to having you around all of the time, then it's going to be quite a big change for them. And so having that conversation, doing something that's going to help settle your kiddo, like drawing a heart on their hand and saying anytime that they miss you, they can just tap the heart and you're going to feel it. Like any kind of little thing, whether it's maybe like a stuffy or a rock they keep in their bag, to say like, well, when you miss me, like, rub the rock and I'm going to feel it. And we'll be connected that way. Like, that can be something that can be helpful, but also teachers, especially in JK, I think in all grades, the first week of school, like teachers know they're a little bit more patient. They're understanding that this is hard for kiddos. And you see a lot of those tears at the beginning, at the first week, and sometimes second week of school. So be patient with yourself. It's hard for parents as well. We feel separation anxiety from having to drop our kiddos off when we've spent all summer with them. And so I know I sometimes feel that too. And I sometimes get sad being like, oh, my kiddos aren't with me anymore. They're at school. So separation anxiety happens to all of us. So being able to kind of just, again, understand those root causes of the anxiety and be patient and compassionate with ourselves. And like I said, parents and adults feel it too. Logistics of school, driving, pickup, drop off, extracurricular activities, work, like trying to figure out all the places that you need to be logistically can be a lot. Performance, if you're a new teacher or a teacher teaching in a new grade or a new school, there's anxieties around your performance there and what that's going to look like. And just balancing home and life. Again, usually a lot of teachers are off during the summer. A lot of parents have a lot more vacation time during the summer. And so kind of trying to balance it all, trying to balance work and school and, still having time with your kiddos. So it can be a lot for a lot of us. So some things that can be helpful, I've already talked about breathing and grounding techniques. So breathing techniques, you're focusing on taking a deep breath. For young kiddos, you can do the balloon breath, where they blow up their bellies like a balloon and then they blow it out and they watch it kind of go up and down as they're breathing. And also boxed breathing can be helpful. So an inhale for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, hold it again, and then repeat. Grounding exercises are things that help you stay grounded and present in the moment. One of my favorites that I've talked about before is the 5-4-3-2-1 method, going with all the senses. And also sometimes having visual schedules, countdowns to the first day, little prizes like a sticker that they might get if they do a good job that first day. Any kind of little reward system, if that is a way that your child it helps motivate them, then there's nothing wrong with you doing that. Or coloring in a star, if like you had a good drop off or whatever it could be, or if you got ready on time, if you woke up on time. A lot of the times too, for older kids, journaling, affirmations, having open conversations, it's going to look different than it does with younger kids. And so buying a new journal for back to school to kind of write down their emotions or just use it as like a venting tool can be helpful. And also coming up with affirmations together so that you're able to kind of remind them to use those affirmations when they're feeling their strong emotions. And I think something that's really important is to normalize anxiety. Like, share stats or examples of everybody feeling it, even adults feeling anxious about back to school. Even just like, again, talking to friends, encouraging them to talk to friends if their friends are also feeling nervous about it. And so that again just helps to normalize that we all feel anxious and that this is okay for us to feel anxious about the first day of school, that that's completely normal. One big thing that can sometimes be really difficult is returning back to a routine. During the summer, routines are maybe non existent or much more flexible than they are during school. And so, sleep may have been something that there's been more flexibility with. I know at our house, our kiddos have been sleeping later, like at least an hour or so later than what is normal to them. And so a week before, a few days before, you kind of want to start slowly reintroducing some of those routines. And so sleep, adjusting bedtime back to their usual bedtime, wake up time, right? Trying to wake them up early so that they're ready to get changed, have some breakfast, catch the bus, or get ready to walk or drive to school. And so kind of slowly starting to reintroduce that routine is going to be important. School starts at a certain time. We need to be there at that time, not to mention for parents who are working. Sometimes they have to drop their kiddos off and then rush to work. And so making sure that kind of starting that routine, especially around sleep, a few days before. Screen times, if there's been more screen times during the summer and it has kind of become a habit, slowly starting to reduce and transition away from screen times as they were in the summer. So that may mean that your family has a rule about screens getting put away at a certain time. Or maybe you're only having like less limited time to be on your screen, whatever kind of works for your family. And as your family rule, kind of again, starting that a few days before and having a conversation of, things are going to go back to how they were back when school was on. Meal prep is maybe more of a transition for parents, but also can definitely be a transition for kiddos if they are involved in their meal prep. So making mornings a little bit easier by having snacks prepared or, some dinner for later that day, anything like that, kind of just getting back into routine to having that. And then homework and activity balance. So having a realistic schedule in terms of what that's going to look like. Again, at our house, our boys are involved in basketball. One's involved in basketball, the other one's involved in hockey, and we also do swimming lessons, but we try to be mindful so that they're not overbooked with activities. And also having time to complete any homework or do any reading, anything like that. So trying to, again, start that routine off slowly. I know for our family around dinner time, when we get an opportunity to all sit around the table, we have like a mini flexible family meeting just to talk a little bit about expectations that our kiddos might have of us as they're starting school and also that we have of our kids. And between me and my partner as well, what our expectations are on pickup, drop off, all of those things. And so being able to kind of have an opportunity to have those conversations with your kiddos. Obviously, this is going to vary in terms of the age of your kids. It's going to vary in terms of what your family looks like. But I know for us, some of those expectations is expectations that we have for our kiddos. And so we expect you to be kind. We expect you to try your best to be yourself, to all of those things when it comes to being back at school and also reminding them of our family values, things like that. And then the kiddos with us too, like their expectation of us. So sometimes that our kiddos have said like, we expect you to, show up if we are feeling a certain way right before school. So that may look like extra snuggles. Mommy, I expect you to give me extra snuggles right like the night before and then extra hugs when I'm getting dropped off. Okay, totally can do that. So kind of having that opportunity to have that conversation and set those expectations for one another can be really helpful. And if they're unrealistic expectations, then we have an opportunity to communicate about that as well and try to create more realistic expectations. We also like to do a kind of a built-in buffer time after school. And so after school, especially the first week, because it is such an adjustment, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but my kiddos are done. Like they're exhausted. They're either experiencing social exhaustion, physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, like even emotional if they've had to suppress or kind of move their emotions away from themselves so that they could be present at school. Like there's just a lot going on. And so we kind of like to have a little bit of buffer time after school. So that means buffer time for them to do what they want to do for the first 30 minutes, grab some snacks, just chill. And then depending on our day, we might have to go to an activity. They might have to help out with their chores. So that may look like helping it with dinner or having to complete any homework that they have. And so kind of having that built-in buffer time after school is just like a nice way for them to settle back into their safe space at home. And also like use rituals. We've like this has been a ritual that we had for a little while, and since then we've had a different ritual. But usually in the mornings we would have like a playlist, and that energized us to get ready. We would brush our teeth dancing, we would get changed, we would do all of those things just to kind of get us hyped up. And then sometimes winding down in the evening, it was, we watched a show together or we read together. And so that's just kind of a wind down moment. So use rituals that maybe your family already has in place and bring them back up as like something to use while you're returning to some of those school routine and structure. And I think one thing to also be mindful of is being flexible. So having stress flexibility. Routines are guides, they're not rules. They're not set in stone. Our routines sometimes need to change depending on the environment and how everyone is feeling. And so if I have a routine of us doing homework at 4:30 after the kids are in school, but it's been a really tough day and maybe my kiddos are a little bit more emotional, maybe they're quicker to tears or they're a little bit more irritable, then that routine might have to take a step back or not exist that day, just so that I'm able to kind of take care of my kiddos. So maybe that means an extra longer relaxing buffer time. Maybe that means we are watching a show now. Maybe it means that we are spending it just outside and we're playing or we're having like snuggly time, whatever it could be. So being mindful that sometimes our routines need to take a step back so that we can be present with our kiddos depending on what they're needing in that moment. So remember the three main parts. So prepare practically and emotionally, have those conversations, get all of the things, bust out your checklist, notebook, whatever it is that you need. And then the second part, manage anxiety with tools and normalizing. Figure out what tools are at your disposal. And so maybe again, it's like a big dance that you guys do when you get home. You shake out all of the emotions that you had to kind of push down while you were at school, and you just get to let loose and shake and dance and jump and do all of those things. And also normalizing, like, it's okay. You held it together all day at school. You're in your safe place. This is an opportunity, if you need it, for you to break down, and everything's going to be okay. So kind of normalizing that for your family, and then reestablish those gentle routines. Getting ready a few days beforehand with changing that sleep routine so that you're ready to go. That can be really helpful. And if I can share a really important thing that I constantly need to remind myself of is progress over perfection. The day might not look perfect. That's okay. It might not look how you maybe envisioned it to look. If you envisioned it to look like excited kids running to the car after school and just like telling you all about the exciting day that they had and all of the new things that they did and all the new people that they met, that might not necessarily happen. It looks like a movie perfect montage, right? Like it looks perfect and we may have envisioned it that way, but it may not be that. So making sure that you're focusing on that progress in terms of like those conversations that you're having with your kids, them opening up to you about something hard that may have happened that first day. And yeah, just kind of focusing on that over the perfection. I would love to hear about how your own back to school rituals and routines are. So feel free to share those on our social media under the comment section for our little clips that we will have posted. I remember I had a friend who, for the first day of school, they would wake up super early and they would go out and have breakfast somewhere, and then get dropped off at school. And so I don't know, I'm just interested to know. I would love to hear about all of your back to school rituals and stories. So please make sure to share them in the comment section of our social media. So you can find us at Outside the Therapy Room Pod on Instagram and TikTok. And if there's any ideas that you have on a topic for our podcast, please let me know. I would love to hear that also. And you can email us at hello@newmooncounseling.com with any suggestions. So thank you guys so much. We've kicked off season 2. I am so excited for you guys to hear all of the guests that we have, including our next guest. I'm not going to share her name just yet, but we are going to be talking about writing, poetry, journaling, and how writing can be super helpful for our mental health. And so make sure you tune in next week for a brand new episode. And thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys all have a wonderful first day of school, getting kind of back onto that routine. And I hope it goes as smoothly as possible for you all. All right, see you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to Outside the Therapy Room. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you reside in Ontario and are interested in working with one of our therapists, please visit our website in the show notes. If you reside outside of Ontario, a quick Google search or search through Psychology Today will help you find a therapist near you.